Good morning. Hope that you're having a good day. Hope you're anticipating a great day. My name is Jimmy Dale. I'm pastor at Mount Nelson Missionary Baptist Church. Have a little devotional thought to share with you. These are my meditations based on the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says to a crowd that included his disciples, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on the earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will be your heart also. The lamp of the body is the eye. If the eye is good, the whole body will be full of light. But if the eye is bad, the whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters, for you will either love the one and hate the other, or you'll be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And what Jesus is getting to here, he's making a transition from talking about the things that people strive for. He'd been talking about prayer and fasting and doing charitable deeds, and he has been revealing what people do to make themselves feel better about themselves, and how they use religion or the appearance of religion as a means of portraying themselves as being righteous. It may not be something they do consciously or purposefully. It's just that we try to pick and choose what we want to believe, or what we try. Sometimes we try to pick and choose and make religion what we want it to be. Why is religion important anyway? And I just want to say that appearance of being religious makes us feel better about ourselves. And what Jesus does here in the Sermon on the Mount, he takes what people do to appear religious or righteous, and he reveals the shortcomings of that. He reveals how man's religion or self-righteousness is not sufficient. This is why statements he says in chapter 5, he says, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. He says at the end of chapter 5, he says, be you therefore perfect as your Father in heaven. And so when we compare ourselves to the Beatitudes, and when we see our consistencies as he reveals in chapter 5, our failures to obey the law, and he points out that he validates there are none righteous, no, not one. And then he comes to chapter 6, and he talks about the things that we do and how our insincerity in doing these things reveals our unrighteousness. And so here in this part that I refer to today, he makes a transition in revealing what's wrong with man's religion and the shortcomings of it, and he makes a transition to what does it mean to truly pursue God. In other words, to pursue him with the whole heart. And what he's saying in part, as we get further into it, there is no part-time Christianity. There is no such thing as I'm going to pick and choose what I want to believe. There is no such thing as I'm going to do what I want to do and walk with God. There is no such thing as doing both things. You're either walking with God or you're not walking with God. You're doing your own thing. Whatever that is, you're doing your own thing. And so he's saying, basically he's saying there's two different paths. And it's important that when we think about the Sermon on the Mount, remember what Matthew's doing. He's taking the Sermon on the Mount and he's using Jesus's sermon as a means of validating that Jesus is the Messiah. And so there's a lot of things going on in this passage. There's a lot of scripture coming together. Remember, Jesus said to not come to destroy, I came to fulfill. He says, not one jot or tittle will pass until all is fulfilled. And so when you have the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew, he's taking that sermon and he's validating that Jesus is the Messiah. You have to remember that in the Old Testament, they were told to look for one like unto Moses. Deuteronomy 18:15, they were to be looking for that person that's like Moses. And so that's why in Matthew chapter 4, Matthew explains that Jesus went out to the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. And then he was tested like Moses was, but better. In other words, Jesus is like Moses, but better than Moses. What the law could not do, Jesus is able to do. And that's why when he says, I came to fulfill, he has fulfilled. And now he gives us an opportunity in him to experience the blessing of that fulfillment. That we also can have righteousness through him. But you can't have it and walk your own path. You either are going to walk with God or you're not going to walk with God. There is no, I'm going to walk with him a little while and then I'm going to do my own thing. And see, sometimes I think a lot of people in Christianity, they think, well, I'll just go to church and I'll pay my tithe. Thank you very much. But that's not going to get you righteousness. Sometimes people think, well, I'll be good on Sunday and I'll do my own thing the rest of the week. That's exactly what he's talking about here. And he said you can't serve God and mammon at the same time. Mammon being another word for wealth. In other words, you can't do your own thing, pursue the things of this world, and walk with God at the same time. And so this is what a lot of people think. Well, I don't accept what he's saying, so I'll just pick and choose. Listen, the truth and reality, you cannot pick and choose what you want to believe. You either believe it or you don't. And the truth is, for example, if you reject the law of gravity, well, there's a consequence for that. Just like if you reject the spiritual laws, there are consequences for that. And so Jesus makes it clear, you're either walking with God or you're not walking with God at all. And so he uses in chapter 5, he uses the law to reveal the shortcomings of man's religion. It's just not sufficient to help us to know God, to walk with God. If we want to walk with God, we've got to make a decision to give up our own path and to submit to his authority over our lives. So that's just part of it. There's much more. I hope that you have a good day. Look forward to seeing you.